complicated.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next Housesit Hangout in our series. It's delightful to see you all. Just a quick hello from Kelly and Keith and Kenny and myself, Lamia, at HouseSitMatch. So what I'd like to do, if that's okay, is ask everyone to just go around and introduce yourselves very quickly. Tell us who you are, where you are, and if you're house sitting. Kelly, perhaps you could kick it off for us.
Okay. I'm Kelly Hayes-Raid. I'm an American stuck in London. Oh, poor me. Where I've been house sitting and holing up with homeowners for the last 6 months. I've been a full-time house sitter and traveler for the last 10 years. And I'm the author of How to Become a House Sitter, Insider Tips from the House Sit Diva. Ta-da!
The ultimate house
Miss
sitter.
an opportunity to promote that.
Yeah. So Keith, do you have a book, or would you like to share your experience of where you are?
Keith has my book.
I have that book. And the BBC catalogue. Does that count? This is what they send to us Americans living in the US, you see, so we can buy British products.
Oh, that comes in handy.
Yes, we can write it on videos and things.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So tell us, Keith, where are you?
Here.
Not an existential question.
Okay. I'm in Austin, Texas, and I am in fact house sitting, but I'm house sitting through an arrangement with a friend. My friend of a friend said these people needed a house sitter, so it was totally it worked out really well. I'm looking after Major Tom, who did make an appearance, but he's over there now.
Okay, well, we look forward to meeting Major Tom in a minute. Great.
But I guess I'm retired from working in IT, and I haven't written a book. I came to the US with I did a computer science degree in England, and I came to the US with an IT job years ago. And now I'm not sure if I want to stay here or go back to England. Probably depends what happens on November, early November.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, we might see more house sitting going on.
But I was kind of introduced to house sitting more by Kelly. She's really with her fabulous book, of course.
Yes, it is a good book, actually. I have to recommend it. And Kenny, can you tell us about yourself?
So I'm live in the Bronx in New York. Actually, I was born in the States, but grew up in Japan, but then came back. Wow. So we actually did the house sitting in Spain for the first time just to get our feet wet, because my wife and I, we decided to take an early retirement and also to decide to homeschool our 7-year-old. So this travel, stay in these local places, hopefully will enhance his learning. And that's how we got into this house sitting. So that Spain one was the very first one.
And that was through us, wasn't it? It was actually through HouseSitMatch. Yay!
Correct. And it was so we got a very positive experience from that. So unfortunately, we were supposed to go back, but because of what's going on, we cannot. In the state, we did do another house sit, and so we see that this is something you can do. So we're not committed full time like others, but hopefully we'll be able to incorporate this more and more into our journey.
Okay, great. And so you travel with your son, which is fabulous. Well, it'd be really interesting to hear your perspective on that, actually.
So we've been actually planning to homeschool him for a while, and he did finish his first grade as of this spring. And then we actually just officially started homeschooling. It just happened to coincide with Corona stuff, but we wanted to really take off and with him and continue with this learning process. And again, this instead of staying in hotels and artificial places, we really wanted this kind of exposure. And the host at the Spain was they were actually British people who are expats, but they were very cool and taught us a lot. And
lots of British people in Spain.
Yeah,
looks
well,
like
some in
that,
Spain, especially, yes, yeah. So Kenny, that's interesting. I'll have to connect you to, we have quite a few families who house sit through us. Okay. And so I'm happy to connect you to a few of them who were actively house sitting before COVID and the lockdown. And I know they have groups on Facebook, you know, that you can talk through as well. So I'll connect you to those.
Thank you very much.
Great. So, well, okay, what is everyone thinking about coming out of lockdown, the restrictions? I mean, where you're located at the moment, I know, Kelly, you're actually stuck in London. It'd be interesting to hear your perspective on that. Where you are at the moment, everybody, bearing in mind your passport, where you're currently able to live, what are your plans for house sitting, and have you discovered what you need to do next in order to start house sitting again? I tell you what, Keith, let's start with you, with your plans. I know you're in Austin, Texas right now, and you have an American passport, but you're a Brit originally.
Yes, I have two. I'm a man of two passports.
Ah. So what are your plans, Keith?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I've got to find a place to live when I have to leave here next Friday. I've got one more week here. So if you know another house sit for me here.
I don't know about America, but we do have a couple of long-term ones coming up in Europe. So I'll be sure to share those with you.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I'm visiting a friend in Phoenix in Arizona. So but I don't really have a plan. You know, I'm not sure about my life really, whether I want to stay here or want to come back, be based in Europe again, come back to the UK. I'd like to spend some time in the UK again. I always like to come back. It's different because my mother died 3 years ago, so I don't have. Well, my brother's still there, but I was closer to my mother, so I don't have that close. You know, I always came back every year to see my mother and to come back to the UK at least once a year, but it doesn't seem quite the same. You know, I've been here a long time now. Actually, I've almost lived here longer than I ever lived in the UK. Actually, in the US, so I feel like I'm very split between the two countries. I'm grateful to have two passports.
So you're very mobile by the sounds of it, which actually is pretty ideal for a house sitter.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get, you know, I don't need visas and stuff to travel to the US, of course. And you know, and if I come to Europe, I show my British passport so they don't think I'm a vulgar American.
Well, for now, but you might be a vulgar Brit shortly. You know, the Europeans may not take kindly to that either.
Okay.
Yes, they won't like us anymore. That's the trouble.
No, don't mention the Brexit word, no. Okay.
It was so nice. Yeah, my passport still says the EU on it.
Oh, it'll be charming soon.
It's sad though. Yeah, it's sad because, you know, I used to tell people I could go and live anywhere in Europe. You know, I could live in Spain, like you said. But now it's not so easy. I don't know how that's going to be now. Well, you can't go and live there now, I guess, after Brexit easily.
Well, I think it depends what your experiences and your commitments are and all that. So we're all waiting to hear the final decisions by country, of course.
Yes.
And Kelly, now your passport, your American passport, hasn't necessarily been very helpful during lockdown, has it?
Oh, it's just been, this has been a really unique week, I have to say. I love the UK, and I frequently come through London and spend some time house sitting here or visiting friends, en route to or from other house sits in other parts of the world. And my American passport has always been gold. But I've been here now for 6 months. My visitor visa expired this week. Somewhere.
Kenny, is that a TV in the background there? Yeah, great, thank you.
Okay. And so I was scrambling, trying to figure out what to do to get my visitor visa extended. And the Home Office here, which is the equivalent of the US State Department, advised me that I could step out of the country and then step back in on a new 6-month visitor visa. The problem is there are very few countries I can go to right now because most of the European Union is not allowing Americans in because of the way COVID has spread in the States and the way it's been reacted to. So I decided to go to the Republic of Ireland because that is one of the few countries that was allowing Americans in. And so last Friday, I flew to Ireland. I was very honest about what my goals were, which was to fly in and then not even leave the airport, and that evening fly back to the UK. And they would not let me in Ireland. They confiscated my passport, confiscated my cell phone, envelope, and given to the captain of the flight that was flying me back to London, back to Gatwick, and that it would be up to UK immigration to decide whether or not I got my passport and phone back. And it would be up to them to decide whether or not they're going to let me back into the UK, even though I still had a couple of days left on my visa. So it was a very, very stressful time. And I've since learned doing further research that Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, is being used as kind of a gateway by not only Americans, but other Europeans too, but Americans, as a way of trying to get into the UK and to avoid quarantine. And so the US State Department has actually put Ireland on its yellow list. As you know, yeah, I mean, Ireland, right? You know, and they did this actually last December before the pandemic.
What does that mean, yellow list?
It means that they're recommending that you not come here, not come to the Ireland.
Oh, that'd be right. It's a lovely place it is, to be sure.
Yeah, of course. But, you know, if they're not letting Americans in, I mean, you know. So now I was deported from Ireland. And fortunately, the immigration at Gatwick, the UK officers, allowed me to come back into the country, because otherwise, I don't know where I would have flown to. I mean, I could have tried to get into Spain, but if Spain didn't accept me, then I would have been deported from there and deported back to the UK. I mean, it all worked out. Well, it all worked out in that I was able to get back into London. And now what I'm doing is I'm paying for a lawyer to work out a visa extension for me. And so I am here legally, and I intend to be here legally for the next several months, probably 9-10 months, maybe even longer. So my plans pretty much are grounded based on what's going to happen with my visa. And I'm actually okay about that, Lamia, because I don't really feel the need to go traveling right now. You know, it's too uncertain. It's too dicey. I mean, I was in this situation where in order to get a visa extended, I was being told I needed to get on public transportation, go to an airport, get on a plane, fly to another country, sit in their airport, then get on another plane, come back to the UK, and get on public transportation, you know, at a time when governments are saying, don't travel. You know, certainly that it's non-essential travel. So it's, you know, it's just a crazy time right now. And
Gosh, well, that's quite a learning, isn't it? That's quite a learning curve.
Yeah.
And we have heard of people who are in that situation or have been in that situation. And we've, in fact, written blogs or asked them to write blogs about it, because we do need to record these, where one arm of the government is telling you one thing. Yes, that's perfectly possible and you can do that. And then actually they're not saying the same thing as the people at the borders, and the border checkpoints actually reject you. So I think that's really important. So thank you for sharing with that. And it'd be interesting to hear what happens actually when the lawyer advises you and what the next steps are. So please do share that when you can.
Absolutely. Well, what I am doing now is applying for an extension.
Great.
I've spoken to several lawyers and of course got dozens of answers that ranged from absolutely impossible to extend your visa to here's a link to the form.
Wow.
You know, it's really that extreme. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it was a matter of just spending lots and lots and lots of time on the phone and on the internet trying to find, and immigration law, I've learned, is so incredibly niched. So it's, I mean, I talked to one immigration lawyer who's a relative of some friends of mine. And what he does is he helps Somalian families settle with Somalian refugees who are here in the UK. I mean, that's how specific it gets.
That's all he does.
Wow. That's all he does. And so, you know, it was a matter of finding a lawyer a solicitor who really handles visitor visas for people who are in situations like me. And so, yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
We could always get married, Kelly.
I know you keep offering that, Keith, but you know, honey, really, right? You know, right here, okay?
Oh, we know each other rather well then, okay. And Kenny, tell us about yourselves. I know you said you're in the Bronx in New York at the moment. Tell us about yourselves and what you're planning to do for the next few months.
So as of right now, even though we have been looking, we just can't pull the trigger on any of them, just because, again, we just can't go. And you know, we were scheming like, can we go through England and then do the quarantine, and then can you then go into rest of Europe? You know, but hearing this even kind of story, like, you, Miss Kelly, it's just like scary. So, this just, since we don't know, it's just so hard to make any of these moves. And because we want to travel slowly. So, and also this whole thing with each country only has, some give you 30 days or they give you 90 days or 180 days. And the fact that, being an American, you can only go to like 20 countries right now. It just narrows down where we can go. And I don't know. So as of now, we are not planning any out of US trips. Even with, a couple months ago, we actually drove down to Florida, and you could see how each state is handling very differently to the coronavirus. And when we returned, we did self-quarantine ourselves for 14 days in our apartment, just keep, but like, even though the governor apparently imposed that, there was like no checking or anything like that by the government here. So it's just, I don't know, it's just crazy here also, I guess, about how each state is handling and how different it may be. And but anyway, hopefully something opens up and then we can make our
Kelly.
decision.
So,
Thank you, Kenny.
when you said that only 20 countries are accepting Americans now, do you mean only 20 countries that aren't requiring a quarantine of Americans, or do you mean
No, even
only
I think
20?
it looks like there was some. This is with like a country that allows with quarantine. Like so there was a blogger or somebody who really keeps like almost like a daily tally on which countries are open. And anyway, it was like around number was 20, but I know that that's including countries that requires quarantine.
Wow.
So like
That's not a big number.
Right. So only one that really not asking anything was like Mexico and Turkey.
Oh,
and
right.
and other than that, like the Dominican Republic, you could go, but you have to still have like a CRP test done before 72 hours. But it's just the restrictions are a lot more strict than you can imagine.
Is that a link you can share? I'd like to see that too.
Yeah, I have to find it. I'm sorry, I'm not really good with the computer, but I'll find the link. There was.
So Kenny, if you email it to me, I'll share it with this group.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah,
it's a pretty reliable website, so it looked.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really good about it. So right now we are stuck here in New York.
Yeah.
oh, right.
And how are things being handled in New York? I mean, I have to say, one of the people I've listened to on a regular basis is Governor Andrew Cuomo, because of the regularity and the clarity and the, just sharing the data. I mean, it's not that easy in England to get the data, and yet, he every day he is there and he gives the statistics, and it's pretty impressive. So, do you feel it's being well handled where you are, or do you think there's a big improve?
I think New York City or New York State, I guess, we obviously got hit the hardest initially, and it was really like a ghost town. And but I think overall people here actually listened, and they wore masks, they didn't go outside, and the hospital was able to handle the overflow of the patients eventually. So overall, New York City, at least where I am, the area, looks like they handled it well. And even now, people outside, most of people are wearing masks. Nobody's really starting troubles or anything. That the drive that I did take down to Florida, and along the way, going through the Carolinas and Georgia, and especially like when I went through Savannah just to pick up something to eat, and nobody was wearing masks. And it was like, what? Like, and then when we went in to pick up some, in the restaurant for the pickup, the whole place was packed, and like nobody had the mask on. I was like, wow, this is how different it is. And obviously, just a few weeks later, that Georgia had the highest infection rate, all that stuff happened. So it's just amazing how each state is handling so different.
That's interesting.
It was a very eye-opening experience. And
Mm.
but so
That's
in the
interesting.
travel, yeah, it was yeah, like you learn more about this country.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Keith, what about in Texas? How are things? Oh, there's Major Tom. Hi, Major Tom.
You're going to come and say hi. He wants to stay over there.
Have you been out in
Well,
Texas, or are you just in the house sitting?
oh no, I traveled. Yeah, no, this just you can go anywhere really. Yeah, I travel around. I mean, people in Austin, everybody seems to be wearing masks here, and the restaurants are at reduced capacity. If you go and eat in, you know, they got, like, I was out yesterday, and they got different tables blocked off so that you can only sit so far. They can only sit like I think it has to be 50% capacity. But yeah, I mean, well, because I came back from Panama. I was in Panama at the beginning of the year for 5 months, and that was very restrictive. We were only allowed out for 2 hours a day, twice a week as a man.
Wow.
They had a split by gender as well.
Gosh.
So that's why I left there. But yeah, here you can come and go as you please, really. But everybody's wearing masks, and all the shops want you to wear masks. And places, a lot of the smaller Starbucks, they're not letting you stay. You can go to Starbucks, but you can't stay in and drink coffee. You have to take the coffee and leave, or sit outside. They got outside tables.
Right.
But here in Texas, it's very hot at this time of the year.
Yeah, you don't necessarily want to sit outside.
It's supposed to be 40 degrees today, 104 Fahrenheit.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it gets hot in the afternoon to be outside. It's
We're
funny,
down to
really.
9 degrees centigrade here in Britain. Joy.
Yeah, I was looking at the weather. Yeah, it's so funny because in England, you know, it's sunny. It looks so sunny outside. I want to go outside, and then it's so hot. It's like oppressive heat.
Yeah, Kelly.
So Kenny, I wanted to ask you, so you were raised in Japan. Do you have another passport besides the US passport? No? And your wife and son are both just...
We're all US citizens.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still stuck on Americans can only go to 20 countries right now. I mean, I'm just gobsmacked by that because I've grown up with this. I've been to 70 countries, and I've grown up with the idea that I basically could go just about anywhere except North Korea. And, you know, I mean, it's so to think that it's only 20 countries now that are allowing Americans in just blows my mind. How does it make you feel?
It's interesting time we're living. You know how things just flipped in one moment. It's
My brother's been to North Korea.
Really?
Yeah,
I think, you know, this, as trying time as it is, this also, I feel like, test our ingenuity and being fluid with whatever is going on, and hopefully that prepared, you know, us and the little one for the future, because you never know what happens, you know. And this condition of, you know, eventually there'll be some kind of a resolution, I'm guessing, and then, you know, some new normalcy will occur, and hopefully this doesn't prevent, you know, people from traveling and visiting different countries too. And house sitting obviously will give us the resources to do this without, you know, breaking our bank. So it's just but that's, you know, as far as that, this limiting of the country, just it devastated us initially because we were planning this big trip for the 2 years. You know, we were going to travel to South America or go through Europe.
Wow.
Because we were planning this, and then when we were ready to pull the trigger and, you know, submitted all the paperwork with the Board of Ed and all this, then of course this happens. But it doesn't. So now everybody's like, "Are you still doing it?" And we're like, "Yes, we're still going to do it." Obviously, we have no idea how we're going to do it, but by joining this community, we are hoping to get this information that you just can't find on the internet, because you can go to the State Departments and read everything and you feel like you can't go anywhere. But it's just, again, I guess we want this kind of a community will just help us with more good information so you make the right choices, and we'll see. So I'm still optimistic overall, even though we can only go to a few countries, but hopefully the number will open up eventually.
Mhm. Yes, I mean, in the UK, there is a bit more movement. I mean, Kelly, you'll have noticed this. People are beginning to kind of wonder. Usually they take UK vacations or they take trips within the UK, but there have been a few people who've traveled further. There have been people who've traveled further to France and Spain, you know, certainly in my experience, the immediate sort of near European countries. But it's not big. It's very, very slow moving. So I think people are being cautious, and wisely so, you know, until we have more certain ground to walk on, really.
It sounded like a lot of people were going to Europe, because I heard of all these stories, everybody trying to get back by 4 a.m. on different Saturdays, because it seems like every Saturday at 4 a.m. they're adding more countries to the quarantine list. And so a lot of people
Switzerland was added just yesterday.
I know, that's hard to believe. Switzerland.
Isn't that incredible? I know.
Where did Kelly go?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're hopeful that things will come back, but I suspect they won't be back to normal for a year. My guess is it's going to be a full year before, you know, we're booking travel to 3 different countries and able to book far more. But I can see some progress. One of the challenges, of course, is the travel business is changing so much and will change again, I think, simply because airlines are going bust. That's one of the big changes. You know, some of the operators are kind of shutting down stores. People are going to have to be ingenious. People are going to have to look to resourceful solutions like house sitting. I think house sitting will become far more popular because of this. That's my gut feeling. You know, I think that's the upside for us, is that eventually it will be more popular.
Yeah, I think so.
In the sense of staying in one place.
I'd definitely like to do more of it myself. You know, I've done a little bit with Kelly, and then I've done this one here privately. It's kind of fun, especially with a cat.
Yes, I know the cat's fun. He looks like quite a character.
Well,
we have a potentially long-term one coming up in Croatia. I think 6 months. The owners are moving out around November time. So as soon as that comes up, I'll certainly share it and see if anyone fancies Croatia for 6 months.
I've never been to Croatia.
Well, it's quite nice on the water. I hear it's very beautiful.
I've heard it's nice. Yeah, I'd be up for that, I guess. Why not?
Okay, well, there you go.
If you're allowed to go there, because I have my British passport. What happens now if I come to the UK? I guess I still have to quarantine, regardless of which passport. I mean, I would arrive in the UK with my British passport, but I still have to quarantine, I think, for 14 days. But they are monitoring it in the UK, I think, aren't they?
Well, it depends, I think. I know someone who's just arrived from Beirut, and they weren't monitored at all, but they self-quarantined. I think they're just trusting you to do it, you know?
You can trust me.
Well, there's pretty hefty fine if you get caught.
But there are some countries where literally the police are strolling the streets, you know, and they're looking at the sheets of people who just arrived, and they're following up by phone. So, I mean, there are countries where they are doing that. But I've certainly not experienced that in the UK.
Oh yeah, I mean, when they had the restrictions in Panama, they had police outside the supermarkets, and they were checking that, because you're only allowed in the shops during certain hours of the day based on the last digit of your passport or your ID if you're local.
Yes, I know in France they had severe fines as well. In France, if you didn't have your pre-prepared signed bit of paper saying I'm going to the shops between this time and this time, the fine was 400 euros or 500 euros, depending on where you were. You know, that's quite a severe restriction. Yeah, so Kelly, now you're in London at the moment?
I am, and for some reason my internet keeps burping. I apologize for dropping in and out. But yes, so my friend Junita was just here, but she actually has to run and go meet some friends. She and I are co-house sitting for the next several months, which is really kind of fun. Keith and I have co-house sat as well.
Yes.
I have a house that I'm watching up in Edinburgh, but there's no animals. And that's pretty much indefinite because the homeowners are in the Middle East and don't want to leave, or they probably wouldn't be allowed back in to their job. So I'm taking care of that house. And then I have this house sit here in London for Kitty, who's kind of right over here. She's got her back to us.
And what's the kitty's name?
She's right there, Rosie.
So Rosie, meet Mr. Tom.
Yes.
Major Tom.
Major Tom, sorry.
Like ground control to Major Tom.
He's very much grounded there, isn't he? He's very relaxed.
This was initially going to be just a 3-week house sit, and the homeowners here are at their holiday home in Spain, and they had intended to come back to London for a month and then go back for 3 weeks and come back, and and they just decided to just stay down there through November 6th. So what started to be a 3-week house sit for me has turned into a 4-month house sit.
Wow.
Which is, great, because I love London and I love this part of town, and I have friends here, and so it's really wonderful. But what enabled me to be able to do that was to do this co-house sitting arrangement with my friend Junita. So she's leaving this weekend to go back up to Edinburgh. She was here planning on being here in Richmond for the week that I was supposed to be gone before I got deported back here. So I have this luxury of 2 places and a friend to make sure that, that we're all covered, and it's a great situation for her. Yeah. So I am, I've been house sitting for the last decade, and while house sitting requires a lot of flexibility, it doesn't necessarily give you a lot of flexibility, especially if you're doing it full time. So this is the most flexible I have been in a decade, and I feel so free, in spite of the fact that I'm only allowed to go to 20 countries with my passport, which is still, but this really is. This is I have not felt this free and this flexible in a decade, and it's just great.
Well, that's fabulous. So buddying up on a house sit actually does give you sort of a few other strings to your bow. And how did you meet Junita? Did you know her before, or did you meet on a house sit? I mean, how did you know her?
I met her through an organization called Internations. We've never talked about Internations, Lamia, but I think it's really wonderful. It's a great resource for all travelers, but house sitters in particular. It's an international organization of expats. And I generally join the local group wherever I'm going to visit. So I'm a member of the Edinburgh group. I'm a member of the London group. It's free to, you pay one membership fee and you can join any of them anywhere in the world. And there's a writing group in the one in London, and that's how I met Junita. Was at a writing workshop that I learned about Internations, and so she and I have become fast friends. And she's visited me on a couple of my house sits, and she's now in a position where she's renting out her home during COVID and wants to get into the house sitting world. So this is a great thing for her. And Keith and I have co-house sat. We've house sat a couple of places in the UK. Where he finished up a house sit that I had so that I could go take another house sit. They don't always gel perfectly, and so we've team tagged, and that's worked really well. And I think I'd be curious to know how much of that actually goes on in the house sitting community. Great way to really make these things work.
And we facilitate occasionally where we know that the people are literally 5 miles apart or something. So we have facilitated, but I think people do make their own connections, don't they? You're bound to bump into different people. And I know there's one particular website organized by the House Sitting magazine where you can tag each other if you're, you can see where you are. I think it's the subscription's a very low price, up $5 or something.
House Sitting magazine, never heard of that.
Oh, well, we'll have to send you a link. Yeah, and so there are groups around that as well.
Yeah, and the Facebook groups, your Facebook group, House Sitting Cafe. I mean, there's, a handful of groups out there too that are really great networking opportunities for house sitters.
Yes, there are dialogues there. You just have to tap into them, really.
Yeah, I definitely recommend Internations too, because when I was in Panama, that was a great way to meet other English speaking, because the language of Internations is English too. So everybody speaks some English. So even then because not many people speak English in Panama, but when you go to these events, everybody speaks English if you go to an Internations event. And they were at nice hotels and cocktails and stuff, they meet at nice venues. So it was lovely.
Yeah, well,
definitely recommended to meet. I met some people that I'm still in contact with on Internations.
Yeah. Here in London, it's more than the networking events that you're talking about, Keith, although they have those. But there's hiking groups. Tomorrow, I'm doing a day trip to Stratford-upon-Avon with Internations. That's fairly inexpensive, and it's a great way to to meet other expats from all over the world. It's not just Americans, which is really nice. It's really people from all over. And then do some fun things with company. So I'm part of the theater group, and so we often get group discounted tickets And so I get a chance to go, and I'll usually post beforehand and say, anybody want to meet me at this particular pub for a drink beforehand? And I've made some really lovely friends that way. And it's a great networker.
So these tools really help one travel and discover more about the locations and so on. I mean, are there any other platforms you can recommend apart from Internations and of course HouseSitMatch?
Well, obviously HouseSitMatch, yes.
Well, I like meetup groups. I will occasionally, if I'm going to be someplace for a long time and it's a generally English-speaking country, I'll check meetup groups for writing groups because I'm interested in just, joining writing groups wherever I go. Gives me a chance to meet new writers. So I look at Meetup. I also, if I'm going to be someplace long enough, I'll join Groupon. And it's not so much a networking thing, but it's a way to get, inexpensive coupons for dinner out or okay, this is wacky, right? But okay, so I've got the phone. This is the book again. Sorry, but my
Who's that?
Right. So on a Groupon thing, I had one of these beauty days where, you go in and they do the makeup and the hair and they take the photos and they want you to buy a whole bunch of them and they give you a couple of glasses of champagne and I had a blast and it cost me, like almost nothing. It was like 15 or 20 pounds or something. And I got this professional headshot that
Fantastic.
I used through Groupon. It was here in London.
I need one of those.
Yeah, that's one of my tricks that I do when I'm traveling.
Well, that's a good tip. So Groupon, Internations, and of course HouseSitMatch.
Yeah, and there's local ones in Panama. There was a Spanish one, Oferta Simple in Panama, that had similar to Groupon. There's the local versions like that.
So you weren't tempted to stay in Panama? I mean, I hear it's a wonderful place.
Well, I was visiting a friend of mine that I've been working with. She had an extra room in the apartment. I was going to check it out. The city is very urban. It looks like Manhattan almost, all these big high rises. It's very surprising when you go to Central America and see these big towers. But I didn't get to really experience the rest of the country. I wanted to go to near the border with Costa Rica. It's supposed to be really beautiful, and there's a mountain there, a volcano. The beach resorts are supposed to be nice, but I stayed in the city for the first 2 months, and then they started locking down on travel. They wouldn't let you travel to the outside the city beyond a certain distance. So then it was too late. And I might go back. I think they're lifting the restrictions. I think by the end of October, you'll be able to travel to Panama again. I might go back again in the future. Panama and Costa Rica are very close together. I have a friend in Costa Rica too. They're both, of course, they join each other. They seem to be a popular destination too. A lot of people seem to want to go there because it's warm all year round. There's no such thing as cold weather in Panama. I think the record cold I saw was 69 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, how awful. Hey.
Keith, are you worried about a second wave? I mean, are you worried about going to Panama and then being stuck there again?
Oh, well, I'm not going to plan to go to Panama in the short term. No, I would be worried about that, yes, because they would lock it down in a heartbeat and you'd be stuck again. And I didn't like that. I didn't like not being able to go out. That was difficult.
Yeah, we were pretty much stuck down here as well for about 4.5 months. So I completely empathize, but at least I was home.
They say it could happen in the UK. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. They said there's a risk of a second wave in the UK. I keep hearing about that with the winter and the flu season.
There is a risk, and they're certainly locking down cities where they see the R number, the reproductive number, go up beyond 1. So Birmingham, I think, Coventry, there are various cities that have been locked down. Manchester, I think even. But they seem to be managing it sort of tactically that way at the moment, but who knows, we'll see.
Just one second.
Yeah,
question to Miss Kelly. How come you didn't come to the States for the visa round? Like, how come you chose to go to Ireland? And as an American, how come you didn't just come back? Like, I'm just curious.
That's a really good question. Mainly because I didn't want to sit 11 hours in a plane wearing a mask. And I don't have a base anymore in the United States. I recently sold my home in Los Angeles, and I'm looking to relocate to Europe, possibly the UK. And so I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't want to sit 11 hours in a plane. It was less than an hour flight to Dublin. I didn't think I'd have it never occurred to me I wouldn't be able to get into the Republic of Ireland. It just, maybe I sound naive and ridiculous, but it never occurred to me that that would be an issue. And, you know, it was $30, you know, for the flight. I mean, it was an hour and, you know, it was easy. So it's, you know, it's kind of risky going to the States. I mean, the only place I would go would be Florida to visit my mother. And, you know, she doesn't want me to come. She says, Florida's crazy right now. When you're dealing with COVID, as you mentioned when you were on your trip. So, so it didn't really even cross my mind to think about.
Okay.
It. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to know if you couldn't come here for some reason, because we also are seriously looking for the UK as a place to go to house sit and to stay for some time. So our always concerns like, can we, if there's some true emergency, can we still come back to the States? You know, that kind of situation. And, you know, we are willing to go through the quarantine and whatever, but then once that's done, and if we are there, like, are the people of the UK okay with the Americans coming to house sit? Is there something we have to worry? Because when we were driving down to Florida with a New York license plate, we were so worried that somebody going to vandalize our car. Because, and you know, there was nothing happened, but you know, just this weird fear came up, and you know, because you know, but anyway, just curious, like how the sentiment is in UK, and if that's, because it looks like there's so much house sitting opportunity there. So if things don't, you know, maybe we might end up decide to go to UK, but we just want to know how easy or difficult as an American to get, you know, those house sits, etc. I don't know, just if you have any comments.
I was lucky because I was already here, and I think that's, you know, and I know Lamia's got something to say about this too, because I think it's really difficult for people coming back here. I've got two British friends, Keith, one of them, and another girlfriend who are both British and would like to come back here, but they can't get house sits because there's that 14-day quarantine thing. So I already was here, and that really helped a lot. Also, the two house sits I have are repeat house sits. So I sat in this London house sit. I was here last September for a month. And so I've stayed in touch with a couple, and I had already committed to house sit for them in July. And the woman who has the house in Edinburgh is somebody that I've house sat for in the past at her old home in London. So their relationships I already had. And so that made it easier. But I haven't felt any at all discrimination or repercussions or anything from Brits because I'm American. Although I will say that when I drove, a friend of mine drove from London up to Edinburgh. We stopped for like a coffee break, and we're chit-chatting with a couple of Scots who were not happy that we had driven up from London, and this was in June. I mean, we definitely, that was the incredible cold shoulder after being so friendly when I mentioned we were driving up from London. So there's, I think there's a little bit of that, but you know, Lamia just got back from a vacation too. Where were you, in Cornwall or Devon?
Yeah, we were house sitting in Cornwall actually, and there was some nervousness. I think the Cornish, you know, look upon people visiting in the summer. We all flood in the summer, of course, with some trepidation. The townies are coming again, but actually, the reception was fabulous, very warm and friendly. Shops were very observant. We had to wear masks. You know, we even took gloves, of course, wherever we were. Actually, we had a fantastic break, and it was a house sit, you know, so it worked, and it worked well. And the homeowner was very respectful of our space. Likewise, you know, before she returned, I cleaned the house thoroughly, top to bottom. You know, all the linen, all the laundry, bleached all the surfaces, all of that. So I think as long as you show you're willing and you're able to do all the things that keep everybody as safe as possible, I think people should respect you. But I think early on in the easing of lockdown, there was nervousness about anyone traveling more than 20 miles. You know, there was just kind of a cloud hanging over you if you had to drive. I mean, I had to go and see my mother who lives 25 miles away. And that was a stretch. And I felt nervous going into this new town, right? Thinking, oh God, what are people going to think? They don't know my car. But actually, it was irrelevant. I had to go. It was just something I had to do. So I think we're all getting used to this new normal, as you mentioned, Kenny, at the beginning. We're all getting used to it. And it's going to change. It's evolving every day. And every time I turn on the news, I think, oh my God, is that normal now? Yes, I guess it must be, whatever that is, I guess it must be the new normal too.
I do think that, I don't think you'd ever have trouble returning to the States if you're a US citizen, though. I don't think, when you said that if there was an urgent emergency and you needed to come back, I don't think you would be blocked from coming to the US because you have a passport holder. They may restrict tourists coming in, but they wouldn't block citizens.
Yeah.
At least that's been the case so far.
But so Lamia, you had mentioned, I know in one conversation that we had about, just how difficult it is for foreigners to be able to come in when there's the quarantine and all that. What do you recommend for somebody like Kenny and his family who might want to come over here?
Well, what I've recommended to people in the past is if let's say you secure a house sit and the homeowner is happy for you to come and you come to the arrangement, whatever the arrangement is, that they give you space, you use different doors, whatever it is, so that you minimize contact. Once you've organized all of that, what I recommend is that you do try and self-quarantine in the apartment, the house, the space, for the period of time, but also find the local area where you can get tests done, because you can easily access tests. There are drive-throughs now in big towns where you can test if you have COVID at the moment, and you can go back 3 or 4 days later and test again. And that's what people I know who've come back from abroad, when there is a quarantine period, that's what they do. They get 2 or 3 tests during that 2-week period and just make sure you self-isolate wherever possible. So that's what I recommend, because then at least you know what's going on with you and you can say, look, I'm clear. I've done this test, did the second one, and so on. And people will respect that information, the fact that you've taken the trouble to do that. And you could do the same before leaving the country, so you know I have a clean bill of health and this is the proof. So that's what I recommend, just because then it gives you also the comfort to know that you've done that. Great. Well, listen, thank you so much, everybody. It's been really interesting. I hope we can do this again. And I hope to see you all in the UK or somewhere else. We'll have to have a meetup.
Come around with a spot of tea.
Thank you.
Yeah, spot of tea, yes, come anytime. Thanks very much. Bye all, safe travels.
Cheerio. Thanks,
Bye.
Lami.